There is a place in Russia where hope goes to die. It is a small patch of land, isolated and cold, surrounded by the dark waters of Lake Noero. They call it Ogneny Ostrov, or Fire Island. It is not a place for ordinary criminals. This is the end of the line, a destination reserved for the most dangerous men in the Russian Federation. Murderers, terrorists, mafia kingpins, and serial predators are sent here to live out their days under the strictest supervision imaginable. For them, the outside world ceases to exist. There are no visitors, no family gatherings, and no chance of parole. This is Russia's oldest and most notorious maximum security prison, a place where a life sentence truly means life. The reputation of Fire Island precedes it. Even seasoned criminals in Russia's sprawling penal system speak of it in hushed, fearful tones. It is a modern-day Alcatraz, but with a history far deeper and darker than its American counterpart. The island serves as a stark message from the state. Some crimes are so heinous that the perpetrator must be removed from society forever. The men here are not being rehabilitated. They are being contained. They are ghosts in their own lives, locked away on an island that has been a place of confinement for centuries, long before it held the architects of modern Russia's most ghastly crimes. When you are sentenced to Fire Island, you are essentially sentenced to a slow, cold death. The psychological weight of knowing you will never leave is a punishment in itself, separate from the physical confinement. The inmates often say they would have preferred the death penalty, a quick end rather than the endless grinding monotony of their existence. The prison, officially known as Penal Colony No. 5, holds around 200 inmates, each one a story of violence and despair. They are the men who society has deemed irredeemable, and this remote, windswept island is their permanent tomb. The journey to the island is the last trip these men will ever take. It is located about 600 kilometers north of Moscow, a long and desolate trek into Russia's vast northern wilderness. As they cross the water and the imposing walls of the old monastery come into view, they know their fate is sealed. Fire Island is more than just a prison, it is a symbol. It represents the finality of justice for victims and a place of eternal punishment for those who have committed the ultimate sins. Here, on this lonely island, the concept of a future is a forgotten luxury. The location of Fire Island is its first and most formidable layer of security. It sits in the middle of Lake Noero, a vast and chilling body of water that freezes in the winter and is plagued by swarms of mosquitoes in the summer. The surrounding region is a sparsely populated expanse of swampland and dense forest, making any thought of escape on foot a suicidal fantasy. Nature itself has conspired to make this island an inescapable cage. The extreme climate adds another dimension to the punishment, with summer temperatures soaring to 35 degrees Celsius and winter bringing a brutal bone-chilling cold that drops to minus 30 degrees. The prison itself is built within the walls of a 16th century Orthodox monastery. These are not modern prison walls, they are ancient, historic ramparts, thick and unyielding. In some places, the stone walls measure between 80 and 150 centimeters thick, a formidable barrier designed centuries ago to keep intruders out, now repurposed to keep Russia's most dangerous men in. The name Fire Island is said to have originated from the torches that the monks would burn at night to guide boats, a beacon of light in the darkness. Now, the only lights are the harsh electric glares of security floodlights that ensure no shadow can hide a potential escapee. The island's isolation is profound. There is only one wooden bridge connecting it to the mainland, and it is heavily guarded around the clock. To reach the prison, one must first navigate the remote roads of the Vologda region and then cross the lake. This geographic seclusion means that even if an inmate were to somehow breach the monastery walls, their journey to freedom would have only just begun. They would face miles of icy water or treacherous marshland, with no supplies, no shelter, and no hope of finding help in the desolate wilderness that stretches for hundreds of kilometers. The environment inflicts a constant, passive form of punishment on the inmates. The sweltering, humid summers bring relentless mosquitoes from the surrounding swamps, while the long, dark winters bring a deep, psychological gloom. The men are trapped not just by stone and steel, but by the very landscape itself. The howling winds, the frozen lake, and the endless forests all serve as constant reminders of their complete and utter separation from the world they once knew. Fire Island was a natural prison long before it was ever made into an official one. The men incarcerated on Fire Island are not petty thieves or common criminals. The population of Penal Colony No. 5 is a curated collection of the most violent and depraved offenders from across the nation. To earn a life sentence here, one must have committed crimes that shocked even a country accustomed to hardship and brutality. The inmates include notorious terrorists responsible for deadly bombings, powerful mafia bosses who once controlled vast criminal empires, and serial killers whose cruelty defied comprehension. Each man has a story, and each story is a litany of horror. Life imprisonment in Russia is absolute. While the law contains a theoretical possibility of review after 25 years of incarceration, it is a hollow promise. No prisoner sentenced to life in the modern Russian penal system has ever been released. The state makes it clear that these sentences are for the entirety of a natural life. The inmates understand this. They are here to die, and the prison is designed to facilitate that long, slow process. They are the living dead, their names and crimes etched into the darkest chapters of Russia's recent history. The roster of inmates reads like a who's who of post-Soviet villainy. It includes contract killers who worked for powerful oligarchs, leaders of extremist groups who sought to tear the country apart, and sadistic sexual predators who left trails of devastation in their wake. These men are considered so dangerous and manipulative that they cannot be housed in any other facility. Their presence on Fire Island is a testament to their capacity for violence and their inability to coexist with society. Here, their influence is neutralized, and their capacity for harm is confined to the thick monastery walls. The psychological profile of the inmates is as complex as their crimes are simple in their brutality. Many are intelligent, cunning individuals who use their skills for evil. Others are driven by impulses they cannot control. They live together in close quarters, a society of predators where a strict hierarchy exists. The guards must manage these volatile personalities, ensuring that the violence that brought them here does not erupt within the prison itself. Every man on Fire Island is here for a reason, and that reason is written in the blood of their victims. Security at Fire Island is an exercise in total control, designed with the single-minded purpose of preventing escape. The philosophy is simple: nothing can be left to chance. The prison's natural isolation is bolstered by layers of man-made security that are both brutal and effective. The authorities proudly state that no one has ever escaped from Fire Island, and they have taken every conceivable measure to ensure that this record remains unbroken. The entire facility is designed to thwart any attempt at resistance or flight before it can even begin. Inside the cells, every piece of furniture is an instrument of control. The beds and toilets are not just placed on the floor, they are welded directly to it or secured with heavy bolts. This prevents inmates from using them as barricades or makeshift weapons during a riot. The cells themselves are stark and small, typically housing 2 or 3 inmates. Constant surveillance is a fact of life. Cameras monitor every common area, every corridor, and every corner of the exercise yards. The only place where inmates are afforded a shred of privacy is the toilet area, as Russian law prohibits cameras in bathrooms. The guards who work at Fire Island are a special breed, trained to manage the most difficult and dangerous prisoners in the country. They operate under a strict protocol of vigilance and suspicion. In one wing of the prison, 21 out of 88 inmates are officially designated as a high escape risk, requiring an even greater level of scrutiny. The guards' interactions with prisoners are minimal and formal, designed to prevent any familiarity or manipulation. They are the unblinking eyes of the state, ensuring that the cage remains locked. Every routine is structured to reinforce security. When inmates are moved from their cells for their daily walk or a shower, they are bent over at the waist with their hands cuffed behind their backs, a position that makes it impossible to run or attack. Even showering is a security operation. Inmates are taken in groups of 3 or 4, always under the watchful eye of guards. This system of overwhelming control is designed to break the spirit as much as it is to secure the body. It sends a clear message to the inmates every single day: you are powerless, and you will never leave. A day on Fire Island is, honestly, a study in relentless, soul-crushing routine. The cycle is the same, day in and day out, for years that stretch into decades. Inmates are woken up early, long before the sun rises over the frozen lake in winter. After a quick, basic breakfast, the day is filled with, well, structured emptiness. The primary activity is confinement. Prisoners spend up to 23 hours a day locked in their small cells with a couple of other inmates, men they are forced to coexist with for the rest of their lives. This forced proximity with other violent criminals is, one of the most significant psychological challenges of their sentence. There are few distractions from the crushing boredom. Inmates are allowed a 1-hour walk each day in a small caged yard that feels more like the top of a concrete box than an open space. The sky is often visible only through a thick metal grill. This is their only chance to breathe fresh air and see the daylight. For the rest of the day, their world is the cramped cell, the shared toilet, and the faces of their cellmates. The prison has a small library, but access is limited. The most significant recent improvement to their lives was the installation of running water and a proper sewage system, which is, honestly, a modern luxury in a place defined by medieval austerity. Privacy is a concept that has been all but erased. Aside from the small partitioned toilet area in the cell, every moment is observed. This lack of personal space wears on the inmates, stripping them of their individuality and sense of self. The guards are a constant presence, their footsteps echoing in the stone corridors, their faces impassive. Conversations are monitored, letters are censored, and any sign of dissent is immediately quashed. The relationship between guard and prisoner is one of pure function, the keeper and the kept. There is no room for humanity, only for procedure. The days bleed into weeks, the weeks into months, and the months into years. The seasons change outside the thick monastery walls, but inside, time seems to stand still. The inmates mark their sentences, not by looking toward a future release date, but by counting the days they have survived. The monotony is the true punishment, a slow grinding down of the human spirit. It is a life reduced to its most basic elements: waking, eating, waiting, and sleeping, all within the confines of a few square meters, forever. To understand the population of Fire Island, one need only look at the case of Yanov Levanov. His story is, honestly, a chilling example of the kind of brutality that earns a man a one-way ticket to the island. Levanov was convicted for the savage murder of his 21-year-old girlfriend, Elena Sorina. He had lured her to a meeting under the pretense of conducting sexual experiments. What followed was an act of unspeakable violence that ended her life. This was not his first encounter with the law. At the age of 17, he had been convicted for the abuse of a 9-year-old girl, showing a pattern of predatory behavior from a young age. During his trial, a psychiatric assessment was conducted to determine his mental state. The experts found him to be completely sane and fully aware of his actions at the time of the murder. He was not a man driven by a psychotic break. He was a cold and calculating predator. Initially, a court sentenced him to 23 years in prison. However, prosecutors, arguing that the sentence was far too lenient for the depravity of the crime, successfully appealed the decision. The higher court agreed, and his sentence was changed to life imprisonment, sealing his fate at Fire Island. Now, locked away in his cell, Levanov clings to a sliver of hope that is almost certainly a delusion. He blames his actions on drug use, claiming he was under the influence of spice, a synthetic cannabinoid, when he committed the murder. He uses this as a mitigating factor in his mind, a way to distance himself from the monster he became. Like many inmates, he speaks of the theoretical possibility of release after 25 years. He hopes that, if he behaves well, he might one day walk free. This hope, however faint, is what keeps him from succumbing completely to despair. For the guards and the prison administration, Levanov's hope is irrelevant. He is just another number, another dangerous man who must be contained. His crime profile fits perfectly with the population of Fire Island: extreme violence, a history of predatory behavior, and a complete lack of remorse that is thinly veiled by self-serving excuses. He will spend his days in the same monotonous routine as all the others, growing old and grey within the ancient monastery walls. His belief in a future release is simply a coping mechanism, a mental fiction to endure a reality that is otherwise unbearable. The history of Fire Island is as layered and complex as the security that now defines it. Long before it became a prison, this island was a place of spiritual refuge. In the 16th century, Saint Cyril of White Lake founded an Orthodox monastery here, seeking solitude and communion with God in the remote wilderness. For centuries, the Kirillo-Novozersky monastery was a beacon of faith in the region. Monks lived lives of prayer and contemplation within the stone walls they built, their nightly torches giving the island its poetic name. It was a place of peace, completely at odds with its future destiny. The 1917 Bolshevik Revolution marked a violent turning point for the island. The new atheist state had no use for monasteries. The monks were driven out or executed, and their sacred home was repurposed to serve the needs of the Soviet regime. The monastery on Fire Island was transformed into a gulag, a prison camp for the enemies of the new political order. The thick walls, once meant to protect a spiritual community, became a fortress to contain political prisoners. The island's isolation, once sought for spiritual reasons, was now exploited for punitive ones. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the island's role shifted once again. In the turbulent 1990s, with organized crime and violent offenses on the rise, the Russian government needed a place for its most dangerous, long-term criminals. In 1994, the former Gulag was officially designated as a maximum security prison for inmates serving life sentences. It became Penal Colony No. 5, the final destination for the new Russia's worst criminals. The transition from monastery to Gulag to Supermax prison was complete, with each era leaving its mark on the island's stones. Even today, the island's holy past peeks through its grim present. During recent renovations to modernize the facility with running water and better ventilation, workers uncovered stunning religious frescoes hidden beneath layers of plaster and paint. These beautiful, centuries-old paintings of saints and biblical scenes have been carefully restored. Now, they adorn the ceilings and walls of the very corridors where Russia's most hardened criminals are marched in handcuffs. This strange juxtaposition serves as a constant, silent reminder of the island's long and twisted history, a place where heaven and hell coexist in the same physical space. The idea of escaping Fire Island is a fantasy, a fleeting thought that is quickly extinguished by the overwhelming reality of the place. The prison is a masterpiece of confinement, where geography, architecture, and procedure combine to create a truly inescapable fortress. The first and most obvious barrier is the water. Lake Noero is a formidable obstacle, wide and cold. In the summer, an escapee would need a boat, and there are just none to be had. In the winter, the lake freezes over, but the ice is treacherous, and the open, windswept surface offers no cover from the guards' watchtowers. Even if an inmate managed to get past the guards, bypass the surveillance, and breach the 150-centimeter thick monastery walls, their ordeal would only be starting. They would find themselves on the shore of a remote lake, surrounded by hundreds of square kilometers of uninhabited marshland and dense taiga forest. The nearest town is small and far away, and its residents would instantly recognize a stranger, especially one in prison garb. Without food, warm clothing, or a map, a fugitive would quickly succumb to the elements, whether it be the freezing winter cold or the disorienting, mosquito-infested swamps of summer. The security protocols inside the prison are designed to preempt any escape plan. The constant surveillance, the practice of cuffing inmates behind their backs when moving them, and the bolting of all furniture to the floor are all part of a system that denies prisoners any opportunity or resources to even begin planning a breakout. The guards are trained to see every inmate as a potential escape risk, and a special designation is given to those considered most likely to try. These men are watched with even greater intensity, their every move scrutinized. This multi-layered security system has been brutally effective. In its entire history as a maximum security prison for lifers, not a single person has ever escaped Fire Island. This perfect record is a source of pride for the Russian prison service and a source of profound despair for the inmates. They know that the walls are not the only thing keeping them here. They are imprisoned by the lake, by the forest, by the climate, and by a system of control that has been perfected over decades. Freedom is not just improbable, it is impossible. For the men of Fire Island, the sentence is not just about the loss of freedom, it is about the loss of a future. Life imprisonment here means an endless succession of identical days, devoid of hope or change. The psychological impact of this reality is immense. Inmates must confront the fact that they will grow old and die within these walls, surrounded by the same faces and the same grey routine. This knowledge inflicts a unique form of mental anguish, a slow corrosion of the soul that many find harder to bear than any physical hardship. The harsh climate of northern Russia adds to their suffering. The long dark winters, with their brutal cold and minimal daylight, are known to cause profound depression. The inmates feel the cold seeping through the ancient stone walls, a physical manifestation of the coldness of their fate. They speak of their sentence with a sense of resignation. Some, like Yanov Levanov, cling to the fantasy of a parole that will never come. Others openly state that they would have preferred a death sentence, viewing it as a more merciful end than this living death. The future of Fire Island is as unchanging as the lives of the men it holds. The prison is a permanent fixture in the Russian penal system, a necessary component for housing criminals deemed too dangerous for any other facility. While minor renovations may occur, like the recent addition of a sewage system or the restoration of historical frescoes, the fundamental purpose of the island will not change. it will remain a place of containment and punishment, a symbol of the state's ultimate power over the individual. It is, and will continue to be, Russia's island of the damned. As the years pass, the inmates of Fire Island will continue to mark time by the changing seasons they can only glimpse through barred windows. They will watch each other grow old, sick, and frail. They will attend the funerals of their fellow prisoners in the small prison cemetery, knowing that their own turn will come. The island, once a place of quiet monastic devotion, has become a mausoleum for living men. Their crimes have earned them a place in this cold, remote corner of the world, where they are left to contemplate the weight of eternity until their time on earth finally runs out.